Hello, viewers. Today we are going to discuss something about the brain. Now, brain is an enigma to most of us. A lot of our behavioral symptoms, signs, different disorders, they all does not make sense to us for a long period of time. Every person is trying to understand how he behaves in a certain way. We are all trying to find and create a meaning of the life around us. This is a lifelong process. In this process, we learn a lot of things from our environment, and this understanding does not end with age, time, people around us. So let's start this journey and try to understand one of the disorders of the brain. While going through this understanding, we will have some kind of knowing about how the brain functions, how the brain organizes itself, and how does the process of disorganization occurs. Now, we have chosen to start from schizophrenia because schizophrenia is one of the most serious illnesses, and the brain goes through a considerable disorganization. No two patients are the same. Every person's brain is different. Now, brain is the master organ. Brain controls all the functions in the body. Different patients can experience different things in terms of hearing, believing, sensing, smelling. What were the views over the years in the past 100 years, in the past 70 years, 50 years? How did this illness has presented to mankind, and how over the years science has helped us understand and decipher its secrets? Now, first thing, Feinberg in 1982, he thought that everything is about a reduced synaptic density. The brain has about 100 billion neurons, and each neuron connects itself through its arms. And where two neurons connect, it's not a connection like this, rather there's a little bit space, and that space is called synapses. Synapses is the joining point of two neurons. And if this synapse has some problem, the connection, the electrical signals from the neurons, the information change will slow down. So Feinberg's first observation was that there is a reduced density of neurons connection, and this was causing a problem both qualitatively and quantitatively. Either the number of neurons, the number of synapses were reduced, or their functioning was reduced. In both this situation, the functioning of the whole of the brain is affected. Now, for the layperson, if you are a patient or just a student, just to create a small foundation, think of the brain as a system in which, when the problem occurs, the system emits less energy. There is less healing in the brain, and there is less energy use. How do we check the brain's energy levels, brain's function, brain's ability to heal, We check through different systems. And what are those symptoms? What are those systems? Now, first of all, as the kid goes from childhood to adolescent and then adulthood, the brain goes through different changes. Number one, initially with the small brain, the EEG wave amplitude, the energy frequency, just like an ECG, the brain activity can also be measured through EEG. Very commonly, you must have heard this term in epileptic patients checkup, and the different conditions can give rise to specific EEG. So in a patient of schizophrenia, it was found that this electroencephalograph shows a reduced amplitude, reduced size of the brain activity. So something is wrong, which happens and starts at the adolescent age, and it keeps on reducing in the adulthood. The other evidence is the metabolic rate. The brain, which is being used efficiently, uses a increased amount of blood flow, and the blood carries the oxygen. If for any reason there's a function problem in the brain, this oxygen reduction can be measured. Now, brain has another powerful power, which is called self-healing, neuroplasticity. Brain keeps on changing itself, transmodeling itself over the period of time, and changes itself to function best according to the environment. If a brain loses this power, we can say the self-healing power is being reduced. With all these changes, where energy is less, the amplitude is less, healing is less, eventually the behavior of the patient, behavior of the brain is reduced. The person is unable to have the same kind of attention, concentration, goal, direction, his drive, his motivation. Everything is going to be affected slowly. And this, over the period of time, can cause a significant problem. It can reduce the quality of the relationships. It can reduce the functioning at your office or the workplace. It can reduce your studying powers. So whatever is the problem has to be reversed or slowed down. And that is the purpose of the medications we will discuss in a while. Now, in a visual form, Feinberg showed that these synapses, these connections have a problem, which can be seen in the circle in the middle of this diagram. When very few connections are left, the function is affected. In 1994, another scientist, Keshavan, came and he said, okay, actually, it's not only the synapses, it is also the cortical pruning. If you have a garden, you must have seen the gardeners go and prune. They cut down the shrubs or the plants. So Keshavan saw that for some reason, the gray matter of the brain, the thinking capital of the brain, is being reduced in size. It just looks as if a gardener has cut down a lot of neuronal dendrites. So a neuron cell, the nerve cell, the brain cell has a lot of arms, just like we have 2 arms and 2 legs. So consider a neuron cell having 2 arms to get the information and 2 legs to give the information to the other cell. So for the information which is coming towards the cell or going away from the cell, both are dependent upon these arms. And if for some reason these arms are reduced, cut down, or are non-functional, the information sharing will be reduced. This was only possible when MRI and strong neuroimaging was possible, and we had the evidence that the brain is being reduced in structure and in size. Now, in 2023, after several years, probably about 29 years, it was found that it's not only the reduction of the synapses, it's not only the cortical pruning, it is a multi-hit mechanism. The genes have a vulnerability to have this illness, the systems in the body, the complement system, the immune system, because the body does not have a gardener. जो कैंचा लेके माली घूम रहा होता है बाग में, तो ब्रेन में who is the gardener? Gardener is the complement system, the immune system. Sometimes our immune system is so hyperactive, it starts damaging the neuronal cells. And an aberrant pruning happens. I made this slide from an AI device, and you can see there are small mistakes in spelling mistakes because the AI is being uh, upgraded every step. So when a complex image is made, it makes small mistakes. Just like the brain, which is a supercomputer, when it starts getting damaged because of the genetic or the immune problem or some external trigger, which we will discuss shortly. For example, if somebody uses cannabis and they have a certain genetic problem in the system, it can also look like a psychotic event. The person can have, he can start hearing voices unnaturally. He can start seeing things, and he might rush to a जादू या तवीज वाला डॉक्टर कि कोई जादू कोई जिन आ गया है कोई he's been possessed, some supernatural force has been uh, tackling him, but actually it's a problem in the brain. There's a cortical dysfunction that needs to be tackled. So this multi-hit syndrome can look like this. This in the center is the neuron, which is having a problem with the immune, with the genes, with the stress, and eventually the problem comes out in a form of a cortical excitation, inhibition, imbalance. The nerve, which is so destroyed or is under stress, it's not going to function rightly. So all the brain functions, the thinking, the attention, the concentration, the reflective process, thinking about the life, thinking about the relationships, everything is going to be disturbed. The stress which we can't see, the stress which is always burning us out. If you are a high stress performer, student, or a highly active workforce of an organization, your brain is not ensured that it will always keep on working at a high speed. It needs certain gaps, it needs certain time to rejuvenate. That's why it is very important that we should take rest, we should take systematic breaks, we should sit down, we should make a schedule. Sometimes you can have a casual leave, you can take a break from your routine, you can do something which you like, and you can reset the machine. And you can spend time with your loved ones, you can spend time with the books, you can watch movies if you like, you can go and play a sport which you don't usually find the time. A balance has to be struck. Now, this is a very nice table which I used Chat GPT to make, and it shows the different problems at the molecular level, the cellular level, and the circuit level. We won't go into too much detail, but for the postgraduate students of medicine and psychiatry or the younger students, they can see the damage at a molecular level in prenatal age, We have found that there's certain neurons, certain locations, certain areas like disc 1 and CA4, NRX1. These, if they are present, they can increase the likelihood of developing a psychotic brain. As the person advances through the age, there can be more synaptic production. In adolescent, the cortisol, the stress hormone, they can be increased, the immune system can be aggravated, and eventually the excitation in the brain can increase and the inhibition will be decreased. Just think of a simple excitation and inhibition model. If for some any reason there is more excited brain, that can cause damage to the brain if it is for prolonged period of time. So when we are stressed, cortisol is released and the brain is activated for fight and flight, or staying there and doing nothing. And this excitation has to go down after some time to give the brain a rest. All those conditions, if you have a prolonged unhappy working place, unhappy relationship, unhappy childhood, something needs to be done. Maybe you're not thinking the right way. Maybe your circle has formed that you are trapped in your own traumatic circle due to your own specific genetic material, due to your own miscommunication with the family. Sometimes parents does not know how to communicate to the child. They might think the child is disobedient while the child has very less avenues to communicate their distress to their parents or their teachers. So the teachers and the parents should be very vigilant with those candidates who are not performing very well or look stressed or upset. So molecular event is a result of a cellular event. Every cell has a full machinery of working. So even each cell is having the problem, which looks like a big problem, and the molecules are formed, and molecules come together and form large circuits in the brain. The circuits will have less functioning, and eventually the brain's front part, the prefrontal cortex, which differentiates us from the animals, and chimpanzees and humans have very similar brains. Chimpanzees are very intelligent. There's a very little bit difference of genes which have pushed us into the humanhood, and they're left in the jungles. So when these circuits are problematic, when there is a frontal hypoconnectivity, certain problems can come, cognitive dysfunctions can come, hallucinations can come. But if you can see, the problem has started right away in the childhood, in the prenatal. So we should act more efficiently and screen these patients before they come with full-blown symptoms. Early detection of the prodrome phase, the early phase of psychosis, schizophrenia, which is more prevalent in those people who have a family history of psychosis, maybe their loved ones, siblings, cousins. So a check is necessary, just like we have a check on diabetes, heart illnesses, thyroid illnesses. It's just like the same thing. There's no, there should be no stigma about talking about these topics. We should not shy away from the brain issues. Uh, let's go through the genetic exact points of the problem. Now, in recent studies, this evidence has come to our attention. For example, it was found that there's excessive synaptic pruning via microglial phagocytosis process. CA4 is a very important immune target we have found. And if it is there, if there are two copies of high expression CA4 allele, the risk of developing a schizophrenia is about 1.2 to 1.8 times higher. Smoking a cannabis can increase this risk 6 times in a normal person, and it can increase to 20 times if you are a serial chronic cannabis user. So be a little bit aware, the risks are there, although there are some benefits. The other important genetic thing we found was dopamine D2 receptor. The D2 receptor is that area which tackles with the dopamine. So actually, gross in psychosis, there is a high dopamine surge. When we smoke a cigarette, there is an instant 6 second, within 6 seconds, there is an instant surge of dopamine due to the nicotine in the cigarettes. Now consider a person who has a high dopamine going all the time in the brain because of a fault in this area. So striatum is a an area in which this receptor density is increased and a hyperdopaminergia condition is created, which causes positive symptoms. There are other various genes which are located, and a lot of information is going on. Uh, a lot have to be found out here. We're still at the start of the understanding. Other important thing which we found was that neuroinflammation, the process which triggers this brain to have this disorganization, could be any kind of inflammation. We have inflammatory cells like interleukin 6, we have TNF6, a lot of other neuroinflammatory signals which can be increased in the brain and can be tested if experimentally we want to find it. Adolescent is another area of high stress for male and females. They go through a lot of societal pressures. And an interesting thing is that if we can reduce that society pressure, as you must have seen the Netflix drama called Adolescent, it shows how the bullying, the, the miscommunication in the schooling, the parental divide increases the pressure too much. So create a good bond with your kids and keep an open channel so that they can talk about different things. Another problem we see is a circuit dysfunction. Now, brain has 6 layers of neurons. The cortex has 6 layers of neurons, while cerebellum, the coordination center at the back of the brain, that has 3-layered system. But in the cortex, in the main brain, the 6 layers, the third layer, which is called the pyramidal neurons, they show a specific decline in those connections called dendritic spines. So DLPFC is the frontal part of the brain, and its third layer, the connections are going low. If they are going low, what will happen? There is going to be a reduced terminals, and AMPA and NMDA receptors will go down, and there will be less powering, or the powered up electricity in the brain will go low. It can be called as hypofrontality. It can be measured through different ways, and it can be called as a result of oxidative stress or the BDNF. And we will see in a while how to reduce this damage and how to regain the BDNF so that the brain is rebuilt and the functions are recaptured. Okay, so we just saw how the excitability and the inhibitory process is going into a disarray and the circuit dysfunction is coming. If the genes are faulty and the environment is faulty, still we need one important thing, and that is switching on of a faulty gene. That is called a triggering on, or an epigenetic factor. All diabetic patients with diabetic vulnerability will not fire up until a specific trigger is on. There is some protectiveness. So if you have bad genes, troublesome genes, we can reduce the trigger, and we can reduce the aggressiveness, the viciousness of the disease. Epigenetics and timing of the risk. Why is adolescent is a time when this illness comes? Because epigenetic factors are creating some changes in the brain, which we can call here as a DNA methylation process. DNA goes through some transformation, and this process of methylation can undergo a fault, and this fault can come out in the structural damage, and it can be seen in a cognitive rigidity form. The persons with this psychosis cannot tackle abstract, difficult concepts. There will be a rigidity. लकीर के फकीर, वाक़तन अगर लकीर का फकीर कुछ होता है, तो that is seen in this kind of. So if you how we assess the patient, usually we give them an abstract idea. For example, we say इस जुमले का मतलब बताइए, कि हम पूछते हैं आपको कोई मुहावरे आते हैं, जैसे नेकी कर दरिया में डाल. A patient of psychosis will say कि हाँ जी बिल्कुल नेकी करें और दरिया में डाल दें. They cannot comprehend that what does it mean. And all the patients will not be in that fully disorganized state. They will show different stages of destruction unless stopped by timely giving of the medication. This is how the brain looks. This is again a graph made, and it shows a lot of mistakes because of the AI mistakes. Probably it's going through a disorganization process. But I thought I'll show you some pictures to create in your mind a picture how brain is going into a disorganization phase. Okay, so it shows molecular mechanism, it shows developmental windows, the same thing we just discussed. It says graphical representation. And the third, the enzyme, the methylation process is shown. There's a prefrontal dopamine problem triggered by the environment and leading to an immune activation. Today, we just focused mainly on the damage in the brain and the processes which happen at the neuronal area. We won't go into detail about the symptoms, but just for your, we'll just lightly touch it. It does not matter what kind of hallucination you're experiencing. It does not matter what kind of delusion are you experiencing. A lot of our training is bent upon the type of delusions, type of hallucination, type of catatonia. Catatonia is a problem in the musculature contraction. So a patient might be having a problem where they can stand in one posture for a number of hours. They can stand or kind of they can be looked at as if they're self-laughing or self-talking to themselves. We will go into this detail in next sitting, so we can judiciously go through it. There was a recent study that the audience can only listen effectively for probably 15 to 20 minutes. So we will take small gaps to discuss this area separately. And we will also go through the different medications which are available. We will talk in detail, step by step, and we will discuss what kind of medications, when we should give them, what are available in Pakistan, and how we go about it, so you can make decision. You can find the right time, right medication. If you are a patient of schizophrenia, there is no reason to lose hope. There are so many scientists, research, which have already found a lot of good help, and no two patients are the same. If you had considerable loss in your life, the rest of the neurons can be built up. We can power them up. There are ways we can increase the BDNF. We can fix the brain disorganizations. We can try to fix hallucinations, delusions, all kind of these symptoms. And if you don't know what is hallucination, it means you can see things which no other person can see. You can hear voices which other people are not hearing. And a delusion is a fixed, firm, false belief which only you believe. And if there is some kind of this disagreement with your surrounding, that can also be fixed. If you have any questions, if you liked this video, if you think it was helpful, do share in the comments and let me know what kind of videos would you like. And I will try to come with a suitable uh, topic very soon again. Thank you for listening. It was great to have you over here. Goodbye.